I'm Tom. He's Justin. We run AI consultancies and meet every week to talk shop anyway. We get asked these questions all the time, so we thought, why not record it? We mainly chat about how AI and automation are changing the way businesses and humans get things done. Justin, what are we talking about this week?
Well, Tom, I'm glad you asked. We have been having discussions about like where we see all these AI things going this year and how it's going to impact like clients that we work with, businesses in general. So we thought we would come back together and actually do our 2025 AI predictions. We've got our top three that we've discussed, and we can well at a headline level we've discussed, but I think we wanted to have a chat about each of them, like because we see so much going on, and then a bit of honorable mentions, and then that's it. I think. Ready?
That's it. Not bad for a first episode.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm ready. What do
Okay.
you got? What's number one?
Okay. Number one, the thing that is on everyone's social and news feeds when it comes to AI news, and I think everyone's already burnt out about it, but that's for a reason because, as we said, AI agents will be a huge focus, but the caveat of they are not going to be autonomous for some time. You wrote, I think, the autonomous part. What does that mean to you, Tom?
Yeah, you know, an automation with a query to ChatGPT is not an AI agent, right? Like that's not really enough. I think there's like a ton of promise in the AI agent space where you like create some autonomous agent, put it in an environment, and like give it loose inputs and requests, and it sort of figures out the right way to generate something valuable on the other side. Like, will AI be able to do that at some point this year? Probably. Are there AIs that can do that right now? Probably as well, but is it adopted? Are there like real ways to build this and deploy it for thousands or hundreds of companies? Like, not really. Like, it's really not fulfilling the promise, I think, in the way that people are branding it to fill the promise right now. But you know, I think AI agents are a natural progression of like the AI tool set, but it's really not going to be autonomous or something that you can trust and run, unmonitored for huge periods of time. Like that's just not going to work.
Yeah, it's definitely more for like the rote stuff that I mean humans don't want to do in the first place. I think that was 2024 was like companies going moonshot with let's invest all this money just to see what works and not realizing I think that there's a difference between the technology and the product. Just like phones, just like the internet is a technology, the things that we do on it and build on it and ship and whatnot are the products. And I think everyone's realizing that of like, oh, the agents are the first real productization of AI that people can wrap their heads around and are applicable in every business or even for B2C side. But I think that is the big difference this year of like AI agents are going to be used everywhere, and we can chat about how we think they're going to be used. But you still need the human in the loop side of things, because there is still, you don't want to do financial due diligence on buying or selling a company, and next thing you know, it calculated all the wrong financial model equations and made up its own mind on stuff. Like we won't be there for another couple of years, but if you've got a business that is intaking a ton of customer requests and half of them are very obvious solutions and being able to go find out that and have the agent plugged into your different systems of like, okay, who is this customer? What service are they signed up for? What level in a SaaS or what order did they make on our ecom platform? And then going to the help articles on your internal wiki, and then taking the
Yeah.
context of what they said. Like there was the era of chatbots that I think were disappointing to most people, and the agentic approach is just so much better because the whole goal of it is that you have, as they say, a swarm of a few digital humans going to like three different places to figure out the thing, come back together, summarize it together, and then give an answer. It's not just the chatbot where it was like, give it a PDF of your help articles and it'll humanize that to your question.
Regurgitate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I think will be the huge use case this year of like things that humans are doing in a rote way or that is very repeatable, but not to the level of, some of the snake oil AI people I think are like, yeah, this is going to lead to one person, $1 billion companies because you don't need any employees like that. Maybe someday, but that's certainly not going to be in 2025.
I think it's like further pushing the fluff
Yeah.
from like the AI marketer's brain of like this is clickbait. This is a way to like get people in the short term really excited about it. Is there a thread of technical truth? Absolutely. But do expectations meet reality? I don't think anywhere close right now. Um, Give us 6 months, right? I mean, you've been saying that for the last couple of years, right? Since ChatGPT comes out, give us 6 months, give it 6 months, and see what happens. I think the new models will be exponentially more capable, right? But it's still, I think, a question of how do processes and systems internally organize to enable people to leverage these technologies. The problem is not the technology. It's not like you're going to wave a magic wand and all of a sudden adopt AI agents and it's going to fix all your internal spaghetti. It's like you need to have these core systems that people leverage that really like extend their faculties, extend their abilities and intelligence and strategies, not completely reliant on this, AI agent that, you can't even validate if you're getting good information from it, right? Like
Yeah.
you need to have these like I think core pieces internally already set up to be able to really leverage this stuff.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see like how quickly the market is adapting, like the software and technology market is adapting to provide businesses with the ability to do that. Like, have you seen Exa AI at all? Those
I
startups?
haven't actually. Oh no, you sent me a link about this the
Yeah.
other day.
Exa AI is fascinating, and it's like this whole new era of tech startups that
Yeah.
are building APIs and data infrastructure for AI. They're not building it for humans. They're building it for AIs to use. So Exa is a good example where, if you plug an agent into Google, it's going to have to sift through all the ads still, and it's going to have to parse like the SEO BS that is,
Hmm.
flooding top results across Google. But Exa AI basically turns all the results into more structured data and builds an API for agents to connect directly with it. So it kind of skips this whole RPA side of like, a computer reading, going to a website and reading a screen. It's just the straight data between what you're building and the data that you need. So that's one side of the equation of like, that's what's going to accelerate kind of this agentic approach and adoption of it. But to your point, the opposite side of that is also so fascinating. Like, I think you're talking to folks like this too in the market of like, oh yeah, we're going to build some AI agents and roll them out. And it's like, what are they doing? How are they doing it? Oh, we don't know. We just heard agents are like, they're going to be the AI thing this year. And it's like, well, to your point, what is the inputs? What is the outputs? What is it doing? How are you testing it? Because,
Yeah.
as you've seen building AI stuff, the first iteration sucks. Usually your responses are not great. And it's, a couple of weeks of getting things out of people's heads, in a financial services company, sitting down with three or four analysts and saying, walk, talk out loud and walk us through how you are analyzing this deal memo or this cash flow analysis or whatever it might be. And then you turn that into the prompt to make a better AI agent versus just typing in, you're a financial analyst who analyzes deal documents and summarizes them for me. Like that's, I think, how people are thinking about it. But the best agentic approach is like essentially getting all of the knowledge out of people's heads of how they think about their job and then turning that into like full featured AI prompts. And then you can let the agents loose and have it do a bunch of stuff for you.
I mean, totally. Like this is so. I can't emphasize enough how at the beginning we are. Like this is WordPress 20 years ago. Maybe was WordPress around in 2005? Like as much as that's that's like a foundational piece of the internet. Like agents are barely there right now. They're barely a I guess, artificial entity type that we can even, discuss and that might be useful. There's so many other things that need to be also true inside your organization to be able to leverage them in any meaningful way. I think Exa AI as a product, just reading the landing page here, the web as a database, business grade search and crawling for any web data, that's super interesting, right? There's this type of business that is actually being created to leverage this new type of um, business, right? Like this is AI oriented products. I wonder, how far away we are in a world where AI agents are actually, buying and selling things that would be business systems, not just buying and selling crypto or buying and selling stocks. That has its own, interesting utility as well. But like, I'm going to use Exa AI over this other framework that does web scraping. Like, how far away are we from something like that? And how do you even, if you're building an AI oriented technology, like what are the ways that you compete or convince, in
AI to
AI to
buy
like
it.
buy this product over the other?
Oh, it's already changing SEO, which is
What was that?
fascinating. It's already changing SEO, which is
Yeah.
fascinating. It's leads us though to like the other thing, because it sounds like maybe we're being pessimistic about agents. It's more so we're at early days, but it is going to accelerate fast, which is why it's going to be a huge thing. By the end of 2025, this will be kind of a normal thing that people start to think about injecting into their business. The flip side of that though, of preparing for it, that's something that we were briefly talking about, is it totally changes the data and IT architecture of businesses. Like an example that I think of recently was a client wanting, or a potential client talking about agents and wanting to inject those into the business. And they said, yeah, I just want everyone to have access to a Slack chatbot that's actually an AI agent that we can just ask questions about how the business is doing. I was like, oh, totally. Like, that's great. What are some examples that come to mind for you? And he was like, well, I want to be able to ask, how's our revenue tracking? What's our pipeline look like right now, and into the next quarter, and have it, summarize that for me. I said, great. And you want everyone in the company to have access to this? And he said, yeah. I said, okay, what if an intern asked that same question? Should they get the same response you do? And right away he was like, well, no, we can't have interns knowing our pipeline and revenue and all that fun stuff. Or, someone typing in, hey, how was the performance review for Tom last quarter? Not anyone in the company should get that response. Maybe only that person's manager and HR leadership should. So that's the point to say it's going to totally change the data and IT architecture in companies, because these things are incredibly useful, but you have to revisit, where does your data live? How is it accessed? What is the permission structure between folks? Which is what I think maybe more on the technical side. But folks have to figure this out a lot this year, because it does reorient to how you do data and IT.
And it totally changes, it reorients the way that you do data and IT. Like data and IT used to be a cost center or like a necessary evil or like a requirement if you were a product company. And now data, IT, and like the operational, I'd say counterpart of data and IT all of a sudden becomes the biggest amplifier of, margin inside of organizations. Like it's required. Like if you're not designing and building workflows and automations and AI oriented, outputs for your team, you're actively holding them back. Period. Like you need to amplify them. And you're competing with a global workforce of people that could work anywhere. And like this is going to end up being like, I think such a core thing. We'll get to this on maybe um, our second prediction here. But it's like, if you can take two jobs, both pay the same, both work from home, both have great benefits, whatever it is, and one of them you're doing monotonous, dumb, robotic work, and the other one you're able to leverage these tools and like be mindful with your time and focus on things that you actually enjoy, like people are going to take the latter. Like they're just not going to work at places that require them to copy and paste shit. Period. They're
Yeah.
just not going to do it.
Yeah.
So why are you not orienting, your business to do that? Because you'll win the better talent. Like that's what companies really fundamentally are competing against each other on across industries. Is like, where do I get the best talent? And the best talent is going to go to the places that are focused on creating the best experience for the employee. Now, it could be, free lunch at Facebook, or free like the benefits side used to be the really cool thing. Shout out to Ben and Jerry's. They did that first before the Google campus up in Vermont. That was cool. But now it's like, no, what is the actual work? Like enough cute little tricks around the benefits package. Like what is the actual work and how does it how does it cater to like me as a human and me using my mind as a human? And this is not, soul sucking. And that's where these like AI agents, the automations, the workflow design, like all ties in together, which ties us neatly to our second prediction for 2025. What do you got, Justin?
Yeah, it's like that is the perfect segue because our favorite pal Jensen Wong of Nvidia fame, the CEO of Nvidia, made that comment this last week about like IT is going to become the HR for AI agents. Just like HR is to
Mm,
people, IT is going to become essentially the HR. Like you still have to onboard an agent, as in set it up. You have to deploy it, manage its performance, have it work well with others. And so that is the big thing that I think we're seeing, and is kind of this prediction for 2025 of like there's going to be a much bigger focus on employee adoption and change management in organizations, because there was the digital transformation era, and the stat is like 60 or 70% of those projects fail, and a large part of that is because change
mhm,
management. And that was people just moving from storing their Excel files on their local hard drive to Microsoft Office 365 Cloud or Google Workspace or whatever it might be. This change that people are about to experience is going to be a leapfrog of how they currently do business, no matter where they're at. And so the change management and the adoption and training is going to be huge. BCG's latest report that came out a couple of weeks ago is saying 70% of challenges with AI adoption lie in people and process, not the algorithms or the technology, but the people and process. And so I think for you and I, especially given that we see this firsthand every day of like the training, adoption, and change management side of AI is going to be a huge focus by the end of the year for every company.
Well, gone are the days that the willingness to adopt new technology outpace the technology themselves, right? Like we're at a point where the technology way outpaces organizations' ability to adopt them and responsibly change internal systems to adopt them and enable people. And this is so core to employees' experience at work. It's like, what tools are you using, right? If you're still on desktop versions of Microsoft Access, you're probably not finding great people to work at your company. So the greater focus on employee adoption and change management at companies is the bottleneck in the industry. It's not whether or not the technology can do something fancy one time. It's, do you have the internal systems and buy-in of people to massage the outputs to a point where it's acceptable, and people are willing to adopt that change? Like that's a hard thing to do. People tend to kind of like the way things are. I mean, that's not a, hopefully that's not a controversial statement. Like people get pretty ingrained in their ways, whether they're new to the workforce or not. If whatever they're doing is working, why change it? And now the environment is moving so quickly that the reason to change it is the opportunity cost that is really off the charts in terms of like being unquantifiable. Like the opportunity cost is all of a sudden, somebody is ahead of you and you didn't even see them in the rear view. And that's the opportunity of today. That's why small companies, freelancers are able to move so quickly and adapt so quickly and leverage a lot of these tools. But Boston Consulting Group, BCG's latest report, 70% of the challenges being about people and process, like that's not a technology problem, and that's a really interesting bottleneck to apply as like a lens to all of these different discussions, because it really shifts the focus away from robots and back to the people, which personally I think the conversation should always be about,
Yeah,
is like the
agree.
people at the beginning of it. But yeah, I think that's going to be a huge lens that people decide to buy and adopt and migrate old technology to new this year. It's going to be driven by internal willingness to adopt.
Well, and like let's imagine a world in which you hadn't seen that BCG report. Given that you're building in this area every day, what would you guess the number would have been?
Oh, what would I guess the number? Um, that people would say people and process is a bigger bottleneck than technology and algorithms. Um, I'm trying to think of an implementation that we did at either a big company or a small company where people themselves weren't the biggest point of friction.
Yeah, agree.
Like, right? Like think of a scenario where actually the technology couldn't do what you want it to do. Like that's a really thin line because as soon as you change the underlying people or process, the technology doesn't need to do that one really hard thing anymore, right?
Yeah.
We both come from a space where if you were going to build technology 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, you'd need 100 grand and 6 to 9 months and,
Bunch of
a
software
really clear
developer.
vision. Right, right. And a bunch of software developers, a bunch of designers, and you need to like take a crack at it and you have one shot to like validate, invalidate, and scale all in one swing, which was like a pretty tall order. And now it's just like so the barrier to entry is so low if you're doing low and no code tools. Like it's almost like people in process are really the only pivot point that matters because you can just swap out technologies. The feature sets are similar enough. The real technical constraints aren't meaningful. It's more so about like, is there buy-in and alignment and a way to repeat whatever we're about to do? So yeah, I really can't think of an example out of the 200 plus implementations we've done in the last 5 years that didn't come down to someone's willingness to try something new. Like
Or adapt.
that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I agree. And that is
Yeah,
certainly easier said than done. Like I think we're probably both saying this from a place of like we want teams to be able to adopt all these cool things, but it's shocking how many get in their own way. Whether it's, change management and when you get to rollout of employees are apprehensive about doing it, or more often than not, it's leadership level where oh no, we can't possibly relook at that. It's worked this way for 20 years. It's like, well, okay, the world has changed a little bit in that time, and probably your business too, and the
definitely.
opportunities. So, yeah, if anything, this is out of a place of love. We just want people to realize if they get out of their own way and do things tactically in a smart way, they're in a good place. So maybe a hard pivot out of that one into the number 3 spot that we put, our last one on our big predictions list, might seem less talked about, but from our point of view, is going to be the biggest discussion by the end of the year. What is that, Tom?
Power consumption will be the biggest discussion point by the end of the year. AI is not very good at using power efficiently. And the companies that are currently building the models and running a lot of these AI oriented tools are simply throwing more money at the power problem. And I mean, you're wearing an LA hat, right? We just saw some LA fires this past week. Like, there's a bunch of different environmental concerns around AI and around technology generally. I think putting aside the debate of like AGI or ASI, like actually solving environmental problems that humans have been unable or better yet unwilling to actually solve. I think the reality of the power consumption by AI and these models is going to be a serious discussion point and a serious problem. But we are seeing some companies kind of address it directly. Justin?
Yeah, yeah, it is. So I agree with all that, and for those reasons, that's why I'm really happy that nuclear is back on the table. I think there's obviously from a little bit before we were born, actually, world events that happened that spooked everyone on using nuclear power. But it's fascinating to me. Like a good example is 3 Mile Island in New Jersey was a reactor, I think 3 reactors, and one of them had a mini meltdown. And so that was around the time of Chernobyl in the same decade, I think. And so they shut it down completely, 3 Mile Island. And this past year, Microsoft made a deal to retrofit and restart 3 Mile Island as a nuclear facility, power facility. 3 Mile Island is meant to power millions of homes on the eastern seaboard, Microsoft is not only paying to start it back up, they secured a 20-year engagement with 3 Mile Island as their sole customer. So this power that was meant for millions of homes is going to be used just by Microsoft for AI data centers. And then on top of that, you have, Billy G of Microsoft fame is funding an entirely new era of nuclear in this Wyoming plant. And then we saw this past week the executive order from Biden in his last week in office. We saw an executive order around mandating federal agencies to free up land, like federal land, for AI data centers. And they are speed running every part of it, finding the land, the bidding process for private companies to get the land, the permitting process, which often, especially with nuclear power and data centers in general, is what slows them down completely for years and years. They have a timeline that is essentially a 2-year blitz of what is normally done probably over the course of 8 to 12 years with government for this much land and this much power. They're speed running in 2 years. So it's just wild that, like, to do everything that everyone is talking about when it does come back to the technology of AGI, ASI, the foundation is being put in place power wise. But I still think it's going to be a huge discussion because, I mean, we're at the point of executive orders and 30-year-old nuclear facilities being restarted again just for AI, which is wild.
And imagine if wouldn't it be nice if though that urgency and that level of alignment would happen for the sake of just like people rather than this like artificial intelligence, like like the same level of like engagement and willingness to, I guess, sacrifice literal acres and money to be able to invest in this artificial thing. um it, Look, especially in America, I think there's like a really painful divide between like the willingness to invest in technology versus the willingness to invest in people. I think this is a really good example of that. The energy costs of running one of these AIs is tremendous, to the point of like a chat GPT. I don't know if this is still true. I know it was true a number of months ago. But like a single prompt to chat GPT would cost you the equivalent of a bottle of water. And like, oh, that sucks. Like that's going to come down, right? Just like the ability to just create more bang for the buck. Um, with economies of scale, obviously that number will come down with time. But how much time do we really have if like, massive cities are getting burned to the ground? Power is certainly one of those things that we've got to figure out. Because if we don't, it's just going to be that much harder to be able to invest and get to a point where AGI or ASI is actually useful for people instead of this being yet another thing that is just burning our timeline on the planet. Like that's the reality. Like
Yeah,
we've
well,
got to
and
figure that out.
that's what's fascinating to see governments like kind of governments reckon with that because it's obvious that these can't all be powered by coal plants or fossil fuels. Like even in my homeland here of Canada, it's been fascinating to watch the resurgence of, yes, we need more power. How are we going to get it? Canada is the third largest uranium reserve globally. It's like Australia, I think Kazakhstan, Canada, Russia, like, and then a bunch of other countries. And it's fascinating to watch. Like Ontario, our biggest province population wise, is 60% nuclear. Like the entire province is running on nuclear power. Um,
Wow, that's amazing.
so it's fascinating to watch the discussions here, even especially when, not to go into the political side, but like our prime minister stepped down because his approval ratings were so low, and the incumbent likely kind of next winter has already said like nuclear's on the menu. So point being of like, yeah, I think governments are reckoning with, well, we can't avoid this. We have to get ahead of it for a multitude of geopolitical and capitalistic reasons, but how are we going to do it better than before? And I think nuclear is fascinating to watch in Canada. And a sidebar prediction is like, I think between our Arctic temperature, this uranium reserve, and government's willingness, I anticipate that Canada will be a home for a lot of data centers and power for nuclear and AI in turn.
That would be nice.
We shall see.
That'd be quite the win for Canada, that's for sure.
We could use it right now.
That would be quite the win for Canada. Uh,
So on that note, that's kind of our three big predictions around, AI agents are going to be a huge focus this year, but not autonomous completely for some time. There's going to be a lot greater focus on employee adoption, change management, and training. And then power will be the biggest discussion by the end of the year. We had a couple honorable mentions. I think we both picked one and we didn't tell the other what it'll be, and we'll kind of do a lightning round on it. So take it away. What's your honorable mention?
I'm fascinated by alternative models to create value. And I think that an outcome-based pricing model for LLMs or for businesses that are using LLMs will actually grow. So there'll be some crafty individual who figures out how to identify, overly positive outcomes, and will be able to charge based off of positive versus a negative versus a neutral outcome. And people will be able to actually get what they pay for, or pay for what they get, rather than get what they pay for, right? That would be a really interesting twist on some of the ambiguity around adoption and concern around these models and around these tools. It's like, if I'm only paying for things for sales that close, or if I'm only paying for things that really hit the top of my measurement stick here, like, awesome. Sounds like a really easy discussion. It's basically like a guarantee in this AI oriented tool market. So I think outcome based pricing models will grow.
Yeah, I agree. I think because the existing model in software purchasing is being attacked from both sides. One, in that it's easier to create software and people are not going to pay $50 per seat when realistically they could build it in house with one person over the course of 2 months. And 5 years ago, that might have cost, a year to 18 months with 6 or 7 developers. And now it's much easier to build. So that's attacking the existing model from one side. And then the other side is people want more ROI on these tools. And what better way, to your point, to pay for that ROI than you only pay for it when it gives you ROI, as in the outcome of the tool has been achieved. And for those who might not be familiar, outcome-based pricing, a good example of someone who is starting to do it well already actually is Intercom, where they've built into their support systems their AI tooling, and now they're able to charge customers on, okay, someone reached out to a customer support bot on Intercom. Did the AI solve what would have been a ticket that went to a human to resolve? And if the AI solved it, Intercom gets charged for that. And if the AI didn't solve it and it had to go to a human anyways, they don't get charged for that. So it's just logically everyone should win. It holds companies to a higher standard, as in you should build a product that does the thing you said it will do, and I will. And in turn, on the flip side, we as buyers of these get to say, and I will pay you for that. It incentivizes everyone in the right way. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Cool. I think my prediction for this year is no code is going to have a reckoning. So on one side, you have all these no code tools, which are wonderful and they've gotten us this far. But on the flip side, you are now quickly being able to do more with things like Cursor and Bolt and Replit AI. And the sheer amount of APIs that are now easier to work with, I think is going to lead to a bit of a reckoning for a lot of the existing tools. And I think it's going to lead to some consolidation. We've got, the Airtables and Zapiers and Makes of the world, but you've got the up and comers like Lindy, Relay, Gumloop. All of these are kind of new AI first automation building platforms for no code. Gumloop, for instance, just raised over $100 million. $17 million. Yesterday, I think it was in the news. And so they're getting funding quickly because, the Zapiers and whatnot have to pivot some of their business model and some of their feature set. So I think it's going to lead to a bit of a consolidation. I would not be surprised to see some of these folks bought up. And then on the buyer user side of these tools, I think people need to see kind of more happening quicker, or they're going to start building their own. So I think there's going to be a bit of a reckoning in no code, which to me, that's competition at work, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. it'd be cool to see some new incumbents like really push to innovate the feature set of like these no code tools. I mean, the running joke is like Integromat got purchased and is now rebranded as Make and just changed their colors from blue to purple. Like it would be nice if they were like real innovation in these tools and not just like a stagnation and adoption. But you know, time will tell. We'll see. We got a pretty good roster of predictions this year. Justin, let's see where it goes.
Yeah, agreed. Well, we can wrap it up. I know we always love to wrap up our calls with a bit of a palate cleanser of like outside of all this work that we're doing, what's been catching our attention. So what's your palate cleanser for the week?
Yeah, I've been on the search for a hobby. And my co-founder Mark, who's wonderful and an incredible maker of a lot of things, he decided to get me a Bamboo Labs A1 Mini 3D printer. And I have had a 3D printer in the past. It was extremely temperamental, and like if you turned your heat in your house to a different temperature, it would just like not work anymore. But this Bamboo Labs printer has been a dream to work with. Like I literally just set up the PLA to print and then pick whatever I want to print, hit print, and it does a self calibration every single time. So like regardless of the temperature, the bed leveling, like the humidity in the PLA and all that stuff, like it handles it. So I've been able to make just a bunch of random stuff around, and it's been a cool little thing to play around with. So if you don't have a 3D printer yet, I mean, and you're looking for a random thing to sink some time and money into, I can't recommend the A1 Mini enough.
Funny part is the funny thing because I think that's what's put off a lot of people from 3D printers because when they first came out, they were exorbitant, and to your point, they were not functionally great either. But now, not only do they
No,
work better,
no,
but like,
it's a couple $100.
yeah,
Like,
the price is wild to
yeah,
get into a 3D printer. It's not a $2,000 investment in all this material that you need that's hard to find and expensive to source. It's, yeah, wild. My palette cleanser is a little different. Mine's more media side, but I moved back to Vancouver over the holidays, and we have multiple IMAX theaters here that I did not have in Victoria before. But long story short, when I guess we're roughly the same age, so when we were about 7 or 8 years old, my favorite movie to this day came out in theaters. But I certainly did not see it at 7 or 8 years old because the movie is Seven, which is
mm,
wonderful. Morgan Freeman, Brad Pitt. But long story short, I never got to see it in theaters. But when I saw it for the first time around 15 or 16 years old, I think that's been my favorite movie ever since. And they re-released it for, again, showing our age, 30-year anniversary. Um, they restored it and re-released it in IMAX. So this past weekend went to IMAX to go see my favorite movie that I'd never seen in theaters, and it was sold out and just wild to watch these movies that stand the test of time of like everyone was still, you could see people leaning forward, and the what's in the box moment that I'm sure many people are familiar with was still landing with a lot of oh my gods in the audience, which was just fun to do. So that's my palate cleanser for the week. But Tom, that wraps it
awesome.
up. I will chat with you next
That
week.
wraps it up, man. We both got to go back to work.
Yeah, chat next week. Ciao.
See ya.